Crash Course, we're going to be talking about the media and its effect on politics. Since the founding of our country, the news media has been the public's main connection to the political scene. First, a history lesson. Obviously, the oldest type of journalism is print media. This was the first way journalists could publish their findings in mass forms of communication. An early form of journalism that developed is objective journalism, which is a type of journalism based upon fact and not opinion. Journalists believed that it was most fair to present all sides of partisan debate, no matter what. As time went on, news began being broadcasted on the radio in 1920s and 30s, and eventually the TV in the 1950s and 60s. As technology advanced, journalism did not, and objective journalism kept us informed on the hard-hitting news on all sides of the story on a few major and local news channels. Every single person informed on what was going on in the world, and with that information, they could form their own political opinions on these events. Then came the 1980s, and along with it, cable TV. Well, cable has done a good job at keeping us entertained and helping us avoid our responsibilities, and hasn't necessarily helped the political culture in America. Cable television brought many more channels on air, causing the FCC to lift restrictions on political coverage, paving the way for partisan talk shows. Partisan radio talk shows were the first to pop up, and new cable news channels like CNN stuck with objective journalism for a while. But partisan cable shows on TV followed close behind. One of the first partisan news channels to arise was Fox News. It quickly became the most viewed cable news network. Fox News and stations like it have been giving people with preconceived political leanings the ability to view news with a bias that they're wanting to hear, giving them more partisan viewpoints, increasing partisan polarization, and isolating viewers into one point of view. In turn, this polarization has decreased voting rates and efficiency in Congress, along with many other repercussions. So, everyone knows that the media will always be there to tell us which couples are dating now and what's the top trending song of the week. But the media also has 4 specific functions that directly affect our political culture. First is the signaling function. All media sources, typically traditional news sources like papers, wires, and TV networks, have a nearly unspoken obligation to the public that says they will send notice of any important events or developments as soon as they happen or are discovered. For example, during the Ebola outbreak, there were constant updates about the spread of the virus and the condition of the patients affected to make sure that the public remained informed and safe.
Doctors now awaiting the results of tests on a man at a major Manhattan hospital.
Chasing down Ebola as reports multiply about possible cases showing up in this country.
Breaking news on the Ebola outbreak, the CDC declaring a level 1 activation of its emergency operations center.
The media also keeps up with what's going on in Washington, but usually that's not as entertaining or of a concern, so not as many people pay attention. In fact, the public's attention to issues is usually based on media coverage, no matter how big or small the issue actually is. So, even though like 3 Americans got Ebola, the whole entire country was freaking out because it was constantly on the news. The amount of media attention an issue gets also affects the public opinion on the issue, which is where the politics comes in. When there's a big story or event in the news, all the news channels run the story in nearly the exact same way, so that people get so much repeated exposure to these events that they basically have no choice but to form an opinion on the issue. And when opinions are formed, people expect the government to fix the problem. While public opinion does not entirely influence what government does, congressmen are usually influenced by public opinion in the interest of re-election and usually work within the grounds of what the public wants. Another function served by the media is the common carrier function. This is basically political leaders reaching out to the public through the media to gain support. Maybe you're familiar with commercials like this.
I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
I'm John McCain, and I approve this message.
I'm Hillary Clinton, and I approve this message.
I'm Mitt Romney, and I approve this message.
I'm Marco Rubio. I approve this message because there can be no arrangement or negotiation.
But leaders also use news coverage to gain attention and support. Problem with this, however, is that news sources want to remain neutral and don't want to support any one candidate. Leaders do make it on the news. The journalists do all the talking while the officials just sit there and smile. The media can help politicians advance themselves. It can take them down even quicker. The media serves a watchdog function in which they expose incompetent or unfit leaders of America. Now, this may seem kind of dirty, but really it goes along with the basic principle of objective journalism. Reporting something a politician does wrong isn't biased, it's just saying the truth to protect the public. And probably make a lot of money off of it. Watchdog journalism has always been prevalent, but got a lot more popular after the Watergate scandal. Thanks, Richard Nixon. And the internet has made it 1,000,000 times easier to be a watchdog now, where average people can just post video footage of politicians making unethical comments in a speech or rally that hasn't made the news. The last function the media holds, which is especially prevalent today, is the partisan function, which gives the media the ability to sway someone's political view or opinion. Even though objective journalism was the name of the game for almost 100 years, most news channels and newspapers report bad news most of the time. All this negative, bad stuff happening in the world is much more controversial than someone rescuing a kitten or someone winning a Nobel Prize. So, these controversial news stories cause people to form opinions, whether that's what the journalists intended or not. This leads to partisanship, which enacts the partisan function of the news. Now comes our bad news portion of the show, where we will be discussing some scary numbers. Not that kind of scary number. The numbers I'm referring to are the decreasing numbers of news audiences. In the 1980s, news audiences were at a constant growth. I mean, with all the cool new ways to take in the news, and the fact that there was literally nothing else to watch or listen to, how could you not want to watch, read, or listen to the news all day long? Anyways, the introduction of cable TV was when it all started to go downhill. Sure, cable made it easier to watch more news channels, but it also made it easier to avoid the news and watch something more entertaining. Really, the only audience that stuck with regular old news was the old people. They grew up with neutral, old-fashioned news and still enjoy getting their news from there. Younger adults in their 40s to 50s prefer partisan news shows because they're getting information from the bias they want to hear. And as for the younger generation, those dang 18 to 30-year-olds, the only thing they feel like they need to keep up with is the Kardashians. The trouble with all this is, the age gap in the news is creating an information gap, making young people a lot less intelligent than their elders. This is becoming one of the largest problems facing our democratic system today, and is decreasing voter turnout, which is never a good thing. Well, that's all for today. Thanks for watching!